Hey everyone, in this tutorial series I'm going to be teaching you how to make a really awesome looking game menu such as this one. I'm going to be teaching you how to create buttons with mouse over sound effects, and you can click on them and it pulls up another menu. I'm going to be teaching you how to make a leaderboard menu that actually downloads a file from the internet and displays it. I'm going to be teaching you how to make a settings menu where you can set the screen resolution, the brightness, change your player name to anything you want, and turn music on or off. And then that's about it. So in this tutorial series I'm going to be showing you how to do all of this. Enjoy! So let's start off by creating a new Blender file and adding the buttons you want to add. So I'm going to add a plane and I'm going to scale it up about maybe 6. I'm going to rotate it. Actually, I'm going to leave it right there. And then I'm going to add some text, and I'm going to change the text to campaign. And you can obviously set that to whatever you want it to be, but I'm just going to make it say that. And then I'm going to go over to the font button and change the font so that actually looks pretty good. I've got a bunch of font files here, and I'm going to choose one that I like the most. And I really like this one. It's called Devil Breeze. So I'm going to click on it and set the geometry to origin and parent the text to the plane. I'm also going to move the text slightly upwards and add a hemi lamp. I'm going to select the plane, go into top view and orthographic view, and press play. Now, for some reason the game engine text doesn't stay where it's supposed to be, so I have to manually center it over the plane because it changes slightly when you play the game. So when you have it about right, which is about right there, scale down the plane in edit mode until it's about the size of the text. And scale it downwards on the y-axis too. So that way it just covers the text. Next, with the plane still selected, make sure it is a static object and you probably don't have to change anything else. And now go to the logic editor and add a mouse, make it left button, and another mouse, make it mouse over. Add an AND controller, connect them two together, and another AND controller, connect the mouse over one to the AND controller, and actually create a third mouse over sensor and make it invert, and another AND controller. Then make action, actually do message, connect the top AND controller to that one, and create action and action. So we're going to animate the buttons so that when you mouse over, it makes like gets bigger or has a little effect behind it. Now what I'll do is I will add a material to the plane, and I'm going to make it shadeless, make it all the way white, and enable object color. And then I'm going to go to the Object tab and animate the color of the plane. So I'm going to initially want it to be transparent. So I'm going to slide alpha all the way down and add a keyframe. Then on the second frame, I'm going to add alpha all the way up and insert the keyframe. I'm going to open the graph editor and go to the keyframes I just made. I'm going to hit V and select vector. So now if you use the left and right arrow keys, you can see that on frame 1 the material is transparent. On frame 2 it's solid. So I'm going to add that animation to the first action and also to the second one. On the first one I'm going to make it 2 and 2, so it starts on frame 2 and ends on frame 2. And for the bottom one, I'm going to make it start on frame 1 and end on frame 1. Now I will also need to enable my mouse to be visible, so if I go over to the Render tab and under Display, I will turn on Mouse Cursor. So now if I put my mouse over the plane, it animates to white, and when it's off it becomes invisible. Now it's probably not going to look too well if it's solidly white, so I'm going to go back to the Object tab, and on the second frame I'm going to set alpha to maybe 0.75 and replace the keyframe. Then I'm going to select the text and set the object color to a very dark black. So that way it looks a lot nicer when I select it. Now what I'll need to do is add a sound to the mouse over effect. So I'm going to add a sound actuator and connect the second and controller to the sound actuator. I'm going to open the sound and I'm going to select a mouse over sound. I created this mouse over.mp3 sound, and I'll put a link to the download in the description. It'll be free to use for any purpose, and you don't have to give me credit if you use it. So I'll add the sound, I'll make it play end, and I'll make the volume 2. So now if I put my mouse over the button, it plays the sound. Yeah, it's not a very good sound because I spent pretty much 5 minutes making it, so I didn't put much effort into it. And of course you can use your own sound. So now that I have my first button done, I'm going to add a handle to it. I'm going to add a plane and scale it up. Now I want the plane to take up a lot of room, so I'm going to make it about the height of the camera. So if I actually set up my camera first, move it up on the z-axis, and I make it orthographic, and I change the scale. I'm going to set the scale to about 16. Maybe, no, actually 64. That looks good. So now I'm going to select the plane I just added and scale it up so that it goes a little bit past the height of the camera. I'm going to move it back to the left, and I'm also going to scale it up on the X. About there. Now I'm going to apply the rotation scale. I'm going to do Control A and then rotation scale, and then I'm going to go into edit mode and U, and if I go into top view and orthographic view, I'm going to do project from view bounds. I'm going to add a new material, make a shadeless, enable transparency, put it down, add a new texture, and I've created a simple texture. It's basically a black and white gradient. It's called gradient.png. I'll put a download link to it in the description. So open that image. It doesn't have to be a gradient though, it can be like any other handle. So open the image and turn on alpha, and you'll see here that there's this plane that goes from black to transparent. So now go into the camera view and select the button. I'm going to move it to the left and parent the button to that plane. Then I'm going to select the button again and move it up slightly. And make sure that the new plane is no collision so that there's no problems with it. And if I hit P, I'll have this plane on the left that goes from dark black to transparent, and I have a campaign button. I'll have to mess around with the colors because it's kind of hard to see the word campaign. But yeah, that's it for the button so far. Now you might notice when you play the game that there's this really faint black line at the end of the gradient. You can fix that by going into edit mode and moving the right two vertices a little bit to the left. Then it has a completely smooth gradation. So since it's kind of hard to see the word campaign with the black background, what you can do is change the color of the plane that's being selected. So instead of it just being white, maybe make it orange. So I'm going to set it to that on the second frame. So that way, when you select it, it shows up orange. And then you can make the text white. So that probably looks a lot nicer. I'm just going to scale the plane down a little bit. So yeah, now I'm going to duplicate this button a few times. I'll select the text and the button, and I will Alt-D to duplicate linked and move it on the y-axis to -1.5. Do that again. Alt-D, Y, -3. Alt-D, Y, -3. And then I'll change the second text. What I'll have to do is click on the font tab and click on this number button so that creates an individual object. I'll go into edit mode and I'll change it to something like multiplayer. This can be anything that you need for your game, so it doesn't have to be specifically these names. So then I'll make one called, on the third text, I'll make one called settings. The fourth text can be directions. The fifth text can be credits. And the last one can be quit. Okay, so now let's change the size of the planes. What I can actually do is, since they're all linked, I can just move one and just move it to the side, and it'll look a lot nicer too, because they're all the same size. If I press play, I can now select all the different buttons, and I still have to move it a little to the right more. So if I play it, they're all the right size. Now if I select the quit button, and instead of having the message actuator when you click on it, I'm going to set it to game and quit game. So that way, when you click it, it exits from the game. Okay, so back on the campaign button, for the message actuator, I'm going to make the subject campaign. So I'm going to have a, like you saw in this previous one, I'm going to have a second handle on the right here that shows the submenu for each button. Alright, so now I'll create the submenus. I'm going to select the handle and one of the buttons. I'm going to Shift-D, duplicate it, and move it to the second layer. I'll select the handle and Shift-S, move it to the cursor, tab Edit Mode, and scale it on the x-axis -1. Select the campaign text and duplicate it and move it up. and move it to the left a little. Then Alt-P to remove the parent, and you'll have to reposition it now. Okay, so move it back a little and parent it to the handle. And also, if you select the handle, you will need to turn off backface calling so that the backface is visible, or you could just flip the normal of the handle. So now this is going to be our submenu for the campaign button. I have the word campaign at the top to let the user know that they're in the campaign submenu. And now I'm going to select the campaign button text and change it to mission 1. Alright, so now I have one button that will trigger the first mission, whether it be a separate blend or a scene. So if you click on it, it'll go to that separate blend or scene. So then I'm going to Alt-D duplicate it on the y-axis. Oh, first I have to select the text and the plane. Alt-D, Y, negative 1.5. Select the 2, Alt-D, Y, negative 3. And I'm going to select the second text, make it a separate object, make it mission 2. Third text, separate object, mission 3. And the fourth text, separate object, mission 4. So there I'll have 4 mission buttons that you can click on, so that when you click on campaign, you'll be able to select which mission the player wants to do. So now I'll just move these buttons a little to the left, maybe about this much, and move them up. So now I will select the handle, and I'm going to name it campaign underscore handle, so I know which handle I'm referring to. On the first layer, I'm going to select the campaign button, and I see that if I click on it, it sends the message campaign. So now I'm going to add an empty, plain axis, and I'm going to move it to outside of the view of the camera, to about there. I'm going to add a second empty. I'll make it a sphere, and I will make this the, what should I call it, the animation, no, the sliding handle. So now when it gets a message such as campaign, I will have it animated so that it will slide to the left. And this empty is going to be parented to this empty, and this handle is going to be parented to this empty. So that way, when it's animated sliding to the left panel will disappear, and this empty will come into view, and it will add the right panel. So that way, this one you won't see, and then this one you will see. So now I have to select this circle empty, and I'm going to add a message slide. And I'm going to add an action, connect the two together, and another message. I'll name it back, and another action. Now I'll animate this empty. So I'm going to, on the first frame, add a location keyframe, move it to the left about, we'll do negative 15 units, and add a location. Oops, not there. I have to go to the maybe 10th frame, negative 15, location. So if I play the animation, it goes from the first frame to the 10th frame playing the animation. Now I will select this empty that I added beyond the camera and add a message sensor, campaign, and edit object, and I'm going to add the campaign handle. So that way when you click on this button, it sends the message campaign, this object will receive the message campaign, and it will add the campaign handle. So on the second layer, with the campaign handle selected, I will do always sensor and parent. So I'm going to set the parent to empty. So that way it continues to animate moving to the left when it gets added. Okay, so now with this empty selected, the one that slides, I'm going to add the slide animation. So it is called sliding handle action. So I'll select that one, and there. So I'm going to make the first one 1 to 15, and the second one 15 to 1, so it plays it in reverse. Now back on the second layer, I'll add a message, and I'll make it say slide. So after it's parented, it'll tell this object to slide, which will play the animation. So let's see if it works. So if I play it, I select campaign, and perfect. The previous menu disappears and the one on the right appears, and then I can select which mission I want to play. Now the submenu wasn't in the perfect position when I click on campaign. It's a little bit too far to the right, so what I can do is on the first layer I'll take this empty and move it to the left a little. If I play it again, you can see that there's more room on the submenu on the right side. Now I will need to add a back button so you can go back to the main menu after you click on something. So I'll go to the second layer and I will select the first button and the text, and I will Alt-D duplicate it and move it up right below the word campaign. I will make the text a new object, and I'll make it say back. And then I'll select the plane and scale it down to about 0.5. Move it up again and move it left. Now with the back plane selected, I'm going to make the text say back. So the object that receives the message back will be this empty on the first layer. So when it gets back, it will play the animation to go back and show this menu on the left. And also, with this same empty selected, I will add an actuator, and I will make it action 1. I will add a NAND controller, so after this action is complete, it will send a message, and I will name that message end. So that way it deletes the submenu. On the second layer, if it gets the message end, it will edit object, end object. So if I play it, you can see that if I click on campaign and then I click the back button, I'm taken back to the initial menu. Alright, that's it for part 1 of this tutorial, and I'll hope to see you in part 2. Thanks for watching.